Hello and welcome to Scott Bryson Beyond the Service. I'm super excited to introduce you guys to a new friend of mine that I met through another mutual friend. His name is Simon Arkley. He's a jack of all trades and master of all, kind of unlike me. I'm a jack of all trades and master of none. This is an outstanding human being doing God's work, and I'm just super excited to introduce him to the audience tonight. Simon, thank you so much for being here. I know you're busy.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you having me on.
So before we kind of get into your story, if you wouldn't mind, take 2 or 3, maybe even 5 minutes, whatever it needs, to give the audience a little introduction of who you are, kind of where you're from, and whatever you want the audience to know about your personal life.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my wife and I run an organization called the Lantern Project. We're a counter-trafficking agency. We're based here in North Carolina, serving most of the East Coast. We've been in the fight against trafficking for about 15 years now. So we've seen, the absolute worst and the best of humanity and all of that. And the Lantern Project is essentially what we call an end-to-end agency. So we do a lot of education, prevention. We talk to kids about online safety. We train parents. We train churches, schools, basically anyone that will listen. We are on the local task forces, so we're a response agency. If there is a rescue, we're one of the agencies that will show up to assist. And we currently operate 3 safe houses in the greater Charlotte area for survivors of sex trafficking, where we have a 6 to 12 month residential program where survivors can come with us. They can help rebuild their lives. They can have their intensive therapies. They can have job placement training, and then hopefully leave our program with all the skills they need to start their lives over. So.
Well, that sounds really amazing, and I can't wait to get into the weeds. So, the guy that introduced us, well, I think it was last week. It's kind of a weird story how that all happened, which we won't bore the audience with, but it shows me how God is always working in mysterious ways. And I don't think I don't believe in coincidence. I believe in divine intervention, and I think that's what this is. I'm not sure what the next chapter of my life looks like, but I do feel like I'm being called into the human trafficking world. I don't know what that looks like. And then next thing you know, you fall right into my lap. And so let's just get into it, man. How did you kind of get started? What was the impetus to this? And then do you feel like are you called? Do you think this is a calling from the Lord?
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I were missionaries in Europe. This is kind of where we were first exposed to sex trafficking in particular. We were just walking around the streets one day, didn't realize, that we were right adjacent to a red light district. We lived in the Netherlands, up in the north of the Netherlands. And we turned the corner one day, and next thing we knew, we were in the middle of a red light district. And it was horrendous, the things that we were seeing. And obviously, that's all legal in the Netherlands, not only legal, but encouraged.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my wife in particular and some of the girls kind of started striking up relationships with some of the women. And very quickly, we realized that they didn't want to be there. A lot of the women we talked to were thinking they were coming to work in the hospitality industry and ended up, had their paperwork taken away, and they were repaying a debt that they were never actually going to be able to repay by either dancing naked in the windows or, working in the brothels there. And that was our first exposure to all of it. That, it gripped our hearts. From that point on, we knew we had to be a part of changing this. And we really just sought the Lord. And eventually, when we came back to the U.S., what was crazy was we started seeing a lot of the things we'd seen a couple of years earlier in Europe. We started seeing the same kind of legislation pushes and legalizing prostitution and trying to get more and more of this kind of like explicitness into the general public. And we knew at that point we had to be a part of it. And so we just genuinely saw the Lord, and then we felt very strongly that we were to step into it. Now, in regards to, is this a calling? I tell people all the time, like, I wish I didn't have to do this. If I didn't have to do this, if this was over and trafficking was no longer an issue, I would joyfully retire. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like those of us who are in this, really in this, it's an absolute calling from the Lord, because the weight of what you see, you need to be able to take that back to the altar and give it back to the Lord. Otherwise, it will absolutely crush you. So we just genuinely feel like this is something that God has set in our hearts. We feel like we'll do this until we die, or we don't have to do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely something from the Lord, absolutely driven by God's passion, and the biblical mandate to defend the oppressed,
Mm-hmm.
and the blood of the innocent crying out. And we genuinely feel that this is the James 1:27 mandate, that's, what is pure and undefiled religion, to take care of widows and orphans in their distress. That word orphan also means one without a defender.
Mm-hmm.
And we just feel like we are to be the defender of the one without a defender.
Yeah.
And, the second part of that verse, which people tend to avoid, is to keep yourself unspotted from the world. And that's a big part of what we do too, working with churches and individuals to help them with porn addiction and to help them get free from sexual immorality so they can take their place in the fight for the oppressed. So.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, I think it's amazing, and I can't wait to hear some of your stories. Let's talk about your time in the Netherlands. I hear a little bit of an accent, much like mine, but different. I've lived all around the world, and I could not shake this North Carolina drawl. Where are you from originally?
So I'm originally from the UK. So I was born and raised in a city called Newcastle.
Mm,
And so any one of your listeners who knows Newcastle, I do not sound like I'm from
no.
Newcastle, but that's by default, because when I first moved here 25 years ago, basically no one could understand a word I said. So we speak a regional vernacular called Geordie, and even the other English don't know what we're saying. So so this hybrid accent is, I came from Newcastle to Pensacola, Florida, of all places. So I couldn't understand anyone there. They couldn't understand me. Quite the debacle, but this is where I landed with my pseudo accent after all these years.
No, it's great. It had me thrown for a loop. We used to live. I don't know if I shared this with you, but we lived in London for 3.5 years. Uh,
Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Maybe 10 or 15 years ago, and so I'm pretty familiar with the UK. But no, you had me thrown for a loop there for a minute. What's the movie with Brad Pitt when it's like the gypsy guys always fighting? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's so funny because the people in the north of everyone, when they visit England, they go to London, in the south, but the people in the north are the absolute best people. They say, the colder the temperature gets, the warmer the people get, and
Mm,
that's definitely the case for the UK.
mm-hmm,
I was basically on the English-Scottish border for the most part,
mm-hmm,
and so, I absolutely love it there. I miss
mm,
it. But North Carolina is 100% my home now.
mm.
I'm an American citizen now. I love it here. I met my wife, have my kids here. Building this nonprofit and working here has been absolutely phenomenal. So I'm very much at home in North Carolina. So.
Well, that's great. Um, so tell me a little bit about what else are there other, are you an entrepreneur? I know you had mentioned earlier you had been a pastor before. Is this your sole mission, or is this a nonprofit? I'm trying to wrap my head around. I don't know much about nonprofits and stuff like that, so I'm trying to educate myself as
Yeah.
we're doing this right now. Do you have other jobs that you're doing to support this, or is this kind of your thing?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So I have a couple of small businesses. I'm kind of my wife calls me a nerd with a nonprofit, so I build websites, I build apps, I do graphic design, stuff
Mm,
like that. So
mm-hmm,
I have a business that does that. I have a commercial cleaning company of all
mm-hmm,
things. But a lot of the things that we have are built and developed as part of an ecosystem to support the Lantern Project
mm-hmm,
and our survivors. So, our cleaning company, for example, the goal is, to have commercial cleaning contracts all over North Carolina. So whenever we have a survivor who needs work, so that she's not working in a forward-facing job where she could be recognized or
mm-hmm.
and things like that, we could hire her as a cleaner temporarily while she's, either going through her schooling or whatever. So Yeah, so I mean, definitely wear multiple hats. I still have a day job. The nonprofit world is something that we stepped into. We launched the Lantern 5 years ago
Mm,
because we started seeing a gap in services, especially in our region. And we started seeing a huge gap between parent and children when it comes to tech savviness. In particular, we
mhm.
started seeing kids growing up understanding, how to use technology from a very young age, how to put VPNs on everything, how to bypass safeties. And then we realized really quickly parents are overwhelmed. I have the tech knowledge to step in and help with that. And then so then we were able to marry all of our experience over the last 15 years in counter trafficking
Mm.
with the tech element, and that's kind of where the Lantern was born from. So
Well, I think that's great. I know we talked off camera the other day about mutual friends that we know in law enforcement and the DA's office and things like that. Is there a particular uh, part of law enforcement that you guys work the most with? Is it like local guys, or is it the federal? Are you doing anything with HSI or any of the big boys, or how does that work?
for the most part, we work with local. We do get referrals. We get a lot of referrals from outside agencies and from other nonprofits, actually,
Hmm.
especially over the last couple of years, since we're one of the few agencies now that actually has residential programs. A lot of the agencies just don't deal with residential anymore, which is heartbreaking because the number of beds for survivors is shrinking, not growing. And so, we get a lot of calls and a lot of referrals from other agencies. But as far as our law enforcement stuff, we primarily try to work with local groups, the DA's office, the sheriff's department, the PD, just because they're the ones who are going to be the ones primarily who are going to see a lot of it locally in our community. They're the ones who are going to know to pick up the phone and call us. And they're the ones who are going to be prosecuting cases and stuff like that. So we have a great relationship with all law enforcement locally. We love what they're doing. We love being, in relationship with them because we know that we have their backs and they have our backs,
Hmm.
and that's been huge as a nonprofit. Knowing I can pick up the phone and call for one of our clients and even get counsel and advice from our district attorney here and get information that I wouldn't have had access to 5 years ago. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I want to ask you about some of your, I want you to kind of walk us through from soup to nuts without giving away any tradecraft secrets, right? So whatever you feel comfortable saying, like, can you walk me through and maybe walk the audience through how like a referral comes in, what happens from Jump Street until you get this person in a safe home?
Yeah, I mean it really does vary significantly depending on where the call comes from. Recently, especially because of our relationship with law enforcement, we have gotten more calls from law enforcement about, they've had a case that maybe started out as a domestic violence case, and they realized really quickly that it was much more than that. Remembering that, you know, trafficking cases are rarely reported accurately at first, so, because victims don't self identify typically, and, it takes a lot of training to actually be able to differentiate, a lot like domestic violence and trafficking and things like that. So like one of our most recent cases was from a detective who knew about us. They've called on us in the past, and they had a case that started out as domestic violence, and then obviously, once they actually interviewed the client, they just found out that it was something so much worse. So at that point, they'll call us in, and we'll do an assessment. Our case managers will come in and meet with them. We'll make sure their immediate needs are taken care of because, you know, the law enforcement guys, they do an amazing job, but their scope of what they can do doesn't really go too far beyond maybe helping them for one night or something like that. And if someone's life has just been disrupted because their boyfriend, as they know them or whatever, has been arrested, then an agency like ours can step in. We're not threatening because we're not law enforcement. For the most part, it'll be the female members of our team. At that point, I'm very much in the background, just for the sake of making them feel safe and comfortable. And then we will initiate a transport. We'll take them to one of our designated safe locations. We have we've been very fortunate to establish great relationships with, many of the hotels all across the Carolinas.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on where the case is, we can move them really far away from that location. We can help them get a good night's sleep. We can immediately take care of all of their, the immediate needs, clothing, toiletries, food, all of that. We take care of all of that. And then, work in collaboration with law enforcement at that point, making sure they're showing up for their appointments. As that's happening, we're doing assessment. Is there an addiction in play? Are they a flight risk? Do they have suicidal ideation? Trying to get them plugged in immediately with the trauma care elements, taking them to the hospital to get the kits done if they need that. So it basically goes from calm to chaos in a matter of an hour, where we're all over the map. But at that point, we're gathering all the data that we can and then creating a plan in collaboration with law enforcement, get them somewhere safe, take care of them. Are there kids involved? Do we have to, we've had many cases where the victim's car has been lowjacked or had Apple AirTags and things like that. So we have to be very careful about transport and where we take them to. So it's all hands on deck at that moment. And then from that point on, once they feel safe, typically our clients will actually just sleep for, like 10, 12 hours because the first time they felt safe and the capacity to actually rest. And we'll just be there on standby in the hotel room next door, making ourselves available. And then once we do a full assessment, we'll, in collaboration with law enforcement, we'll either relocate them to a trusted family member or something like that, but keep them close enough so that they can develop the case if they're willing, or we will move them into one of our houses, again, based on the criteria, where they can then be under full-time case management with us, continuing to have access to therapies and counselors and all of that. So but that's, everything can change in a heartbeat. Yeah. We've had cases that have been, heartbreaking where we've lined up everything for a survivor and they literally just have to be there and we would take care of everything and they still choose to go back to their abuser. And, those are the heartbreaking cases. We understand why. We understand the psychological component and the fear and all of that comes with stepping out and working with an agency like ours. But we do see that quite a bit. But thank God over the last, 6 months or so, every client we've been able to help has remained free, has shown remarkable resilience. And all of our clients right now in our residences and everything are all thriving. So
that's wonderful. Let me ask you a question. You're talking about AirTags and Lowjack. I'm glad that you're thinking about those things. What do you do with their phones? Like, do you have to scrub their phone or turn the locations off? How do you do that? Because that can be very delicate when someone you don't know, you're asking for their personal device. How do you guys get around that?
Honestly, what's funny is that's one of the biggest issues we run into. We can tell someone we're taking them out of the depths of darkness and we're taking them away from abuse and they still have a hard time letting go of their phones, which is also testament to our addiction to these devices at this point. But, it really, again, that's a case by case thing. As a rule, we don't let any existing technology come to our safe houses. Yeah. So again, I'm fortunate enough, I have the tech knowledge, I can scrub everything, I can check everything, I can make sure there's no location, anything, make sure every device is, completely clean. But at that point, we still can run into the potential of a client getting online and alerting someone of a location. So we have very strict rules. All of our routers, in our safe houses are all very secure. They're all monitored traffic. They all have very specific access. So they cannot get on certain sites. They cannot get on certain social medias or anything like that. It's literally depending on the client because we want them to be studying. We want them to be developing and learning a skill set. So we will have them, sometimes have access to school sites and things like that. But we're very, very selective about that. And then, yeah, all the technology for the most part never even makes it to our locations, and we let them know that pretty early on.
Mm-hmm.
We can back up all of their devices in a, we typically will actually do that at the courthouse. Working with our friends in the cyber crimes divisions and things
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can keep a flash drive of everything that's on there so they're not losing anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're pretty hardcore when it comes to devices, just because I know if I was a bad guy, I could I could find out where they are pretty
Yeah.
quickly, and so I kind of just reverse engineer a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that to make sure they're safe.
No, that's good. And I think it's awesome. I think what I'm also thinking of in terms like it's go time right now. We're going right now. You're not, she hasn't been vetted. She's not going into a safe house, but we're going to get her to Hotel X to let her get 10 hours worth of sleep. Do you guys like turn her, do you put it in like a Faraday bag or something like that? Like how, because like in order for her to actually be able to decompress and go to a hotel room and get some shut eye, how do you get around that? Like you don't even have a rapport with this person yet. You're just some dude that showed up to help. How does that kind of work?
Yeah, I mean, we typically partner with law enforcement in
Okay,
that area, and we will have law enforcement take those
I got you.
devices and hold them at the
Got you.
courthouse, just so that if there is some kind of location
Hmm.
tracking or something on there,
Yeah,
it's going to show the
it's gonna
courthouse.
ping
It's
the
not
police
going to be
department.
any
Yeah,
issue.
it's good.
Yeah, yeah, and we have had one case comes to mind where a one of the girls, it was years ago now when Backpage was still a thing. One of the girls had a hidden uh, phone, and it wasn't your standard smartphone, but it wasn't dumb, so it was kind of like almost like one of the Motorola Razor type thing where you can get online, but it's super clunky. And she was able to use that while she was in our care to try to sell herself on Backpage. While even though we take in every device, she had a hidden phone. So now we're very implicit about technology. And then honestly, most people don't know any phone numbers by heart. So we don't really have to worry about the hotel phones or anything like that. And so, but we do, yeah, we don't let them go anywhere. We do a full check. Even like I said, even the vehicles we won't take to where they are that night just in case anything is. But we had one case recently where there were five air tags involved. And we had to use, thank God, our friends um, at the sheriff's office have a device sniffing dog, and we were able to have that dog detect all of the devices, and that kind of helped us. Like, it was a huge help actually.
Well,
So
it sounds to me like you guys have this thing on lockdown pretty good, and that's really encouraging to hear. If you don't mind, before we move into something positive, do you want to share um, maybe a heartbreak? I mean, the only reason I want to do this is because it's real, and like putting your head in the sand doesn't make it go away. I'm just trying to drive the point home to the audience. This isn't for everybody. Like in my past life, we have a very good forensics team where I work that did a lot of child porn. I can't look at that stuff. It takes a special individual to
yeah,
look at that stuff. I've seen some things that I wish I hadn't seen. I could not do that every day. The same is true for this. People might not want to see it. That's cool because I don't either, but they don't want to hear it, but they need to hear it. So, like, do you want to share a
right.
story? And if you don't want to, we'll move on. Of like something that sticks out in your mind that was either really sad or really scary.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's one case just because of how unexpected it was that always sticks with me, and I share the story a lot. We had a training. We do regular trainings for families, and so families will get groups together, and we have these events, and there was a friend of mine who was actually, I've known him for many years, and great guy, had a young daughter, and basically came to the training, said, was like, yeah, man, I'm going to implement all of this, but didn't. And then ultimately gave his daughter an iPhone at a very young age. And so this was a homeschool family as well, which again rings true because most church families in particular, they think they're exempt from this. And, what we're trying to drive home is not to live in fear, but to recognize that no one is exempt from this anymore because we're all online. And, if you're online, you're accessible. And that's kind of what we really try to train parents to understand. And this young girl, she was on an app, encountered someone, and he moved her over to Discord, which Discord is one of our dirty dozen. But when someone moves someone to Discord, it's immediate red flag that we know that something terrible is about to happen, because the way that Discord is set up as essentially as private servers, allows these predators to kind of erase their trails really quickly. And so I just remember picking up the phone, and it was my buddy, and he was just weeping on the other line. And he had his daughter's phone in his hand, and he just was like, he's like, I cannot believe what I'm reading. He's like, this isn't her. This isn't her. And so the one piece of advice that he took from me, was he did a random spot check on her device without giving her any notice. Just, took the device, opened it up, went through every single app that was there, and stumbled across Discord. He found these very graphic conversations. And again, his point was she didn't even know these words until she began talking to this guy. And she had been sending graphic imagery and communicating in just very graphic terms with this man who was in his 30s, who was in another state. And just seeing the effects, because we deal with this a lot, but the circle is shrinking so much now that it's like people that I know this is happening to, who have kids the same age as I do. And that was particularly difficult because I knew this young girl, and I knew, thank God she wasn't, she was exploited, she was taken advantage of, but, in my estimations, reading through everything, she was probably a couple of weeks away from meeting this guy, in another state. But thank God, got to that. But immediately it was like her life, the shame that she felt, her life was completely changed from that point. And she wasn't even one of the more devastating trafficking cases. That was a case of exploitation, but it sticks with me because I don't I don't want to keep having these conversations with parents where they're bawling over the phone because their kids are either, are seeing something or doing something or have gone missing. And so, that one always sticks with me because of how close it is. But we've had dozens of cases. We've had some of the most graphic, sex trafficking abuse cases. We've had a, southern border case involving, coyotes and minors, and so our housing in particular is for adults and their families. So we'll take survivors and their kids. We have a sister organization here regionally that we work with if it's a case for a minor. But we've seen a lot over the last 15 years, and I got to tell you, it's not getting any better, and it's not slowing down, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, that is horrible. And I know that most of the audience is aware of that. Not everybody. Not everybody is aware of just how bad things are when it comes to crossing the southern border in particular illegally. And I don't care to get into that topic tonight, but we do. The people that are awake do know that there there are some people that are trying to get here to make themselves a better life, and I understand that. If I was the father of several children and I lived in Venezuela or whatever country, I would probably break the law too. I'm not saying I condone that because I don't. It's called illegal immigration for a reason, but I understand it as a man trying to do right for your family. The
Yeah.
problem is the families that are exploited and the children by these coyotes. Have you seen, without getting into like political views on immigration, have you seen an influx of migrants coming across up into North Carolina that are actually victims of the trafficking world?
So we haven't had a lot of cases
That's
personally
good.
in regards to sex trafficking.
Uh-huh.
You know, labor trafficking, yes. I mean, North Carolina is up there
Sure.
for labor trafficking. But the one case that we did have, the young girl was, her story was incredible. But she let us know about all of the people that came over with her, and she talked about a container full
Oh,
of women and girls. And she said she was held, and she couldn't really give a lot of information because the way that they transport them, they don't know where they are, they don't know what's happening. So, you know, she just said, I remember being in a house and all the windows were had blankets over them, and we were told we were not allowed to make a single noise. And she said she thought there were about 50 women and girls in that house with her. And that was the extent of her understanding of what was happening. Really,
uh-huh.
there was just a lot of them. But we actually we haven't seen an increase personally,
Uh-huh.
um, but you know we have seen an increase in our caseload in general, but not specifically connected to you know southern border stuff. Apart from that case,
Well,
so.
that's good. That's good to hear. So let's change directions and say something positive since we went to negative town there for a minute. Tell us a good story, like one that sticks out, one or two that sticks out in your mind that was just a real, like a 180, a good success story.
Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate enough. We have a good few success stories. You know, we have some of our clients that ended up going on to nursing school, and were able to get their nursing degree. We have, you know, it's hard because it's like for them, you know, it's projecting into the future and seeing a life where they're able to be self-sustaining and self-sufficient. It's almost inconceivable to them. So when you do see them graduate from school and they're proud of themselves and they're making money and they found good jobs, and it really is remarkable. So we have several of our clients have actually moved on and are doing remarkably well. You know, one of our clients that's going to be graduating soon. She's been with us for a year. You know, her life is night and day different, night and day, and she is so thankful. And you know, she messages us all the time to just say how thankful she is. You know, she's always wanting to, you know, give us little notes and things like that to thank us. So we have a lot of those. I mean, it's for, you know, for the sake of details, I don't want to go into specifics necessarily, even though their cases are closed. But we encourage all of our clients to, you know, pursue education and pursue a, you know, employment even while they're in our care. Because by the time they graduate our program, we want them going on to be as successful as possible. So a lot of our clients, you know, have degrees in things like computer science or nursing. While they're with us, they're learning trades and skills, and they're schooling. So we, a lot of our clients, honestly, more so than not, of late, more of our clients have been going on and establishing lives on their own. We ask clients where they want to relocate to, if they want to stay in the Carolinas, if we feel like it's safe. If they have family in another state, we can help, you know, take care of that transport and get them set up. And, you know, when someone's in our care, if they are working, they're contributing towards the house expense, but that money is being set aside for them when they graduate our program as a nest egg for them. So by the time they do graduate, so they're going on from us. They have their first couple of months rent in their new apartment all squared away. We've already by that point connected them and vetted a bunch of churches and given them solid connections. So hopefully the minute they pull up to their apartment, there's already a basket waiting for them from their new church family, and they're already getting ready to start work. And so we have several of those stories, um, even from the last couple of years, that are, you know, we turn our mind to often because we need that reminder and that encouragement. So.
No, that's good. So, okay, you just said something that made me segue into my next question, which was perfect. When do you guys, how quickly do you start talking about faith in God? And when I say God, I mean Jesus Christ. When do you guys start? You don't hit them over the head with a hammer, I wouldn't think. So like how obviously actions speak louder than words too. Like they can see, like they
Yeah,
can tell you're different, right? By the way you act. Um, do
yeah.
do you at what point do you kind of like start talking about faith and things?
Yeah, so we have very strict policies in regards to this stuff. Obviously, our whole team are believers.
Mm,
It's like we're not on paper, we're not what you would call a faith-based organization, and that's just because we'll help anyone. We'll
mm-hmm.
take anyone, and we don't want to be
Yep.
sidelined because we have a bunch of scripture or whatever on our website. But everyone on our team is a believer, and that's because I firmly believe that you have to be able to do this work, because you need that kingdom strength to do it.
Mm,
But our goal is always to take care of their immediate needs. It's like scripture tells us, like, don't say to someone, go on your way, be warmed and well fed, without feeding them and clothing them, right? So because otherwise the gospel that you're preaching is, if it falls to the ground if you're saying, oh, the Lord loves you, meanwhile they're shaking and starving on the floor. So we need to take care of their immediate needs. So
yeah.
that's what we do.
Yep.
We get them safe. We tell them how special they are, how appreciated they are. We let them know they now have a team that's going to bat for them, that we're going to be taking care of them. And as that unpacks, almost every one of our clients has asked us about why we do what we do.
Mm,
And when they're in that place to ask, then we
mm-hmm.
get to tell them
It's
the
good.
why behind what we do.
It's good.
We never we never use our work as a platform to 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 exploit, or
Yeah.
to do anything like that. We're basically going to say, what do you need? Let's take care of that. And then as that relationship develops, we've had people approach us. We actually just had a training this past weekend, and one of the things that I tell our volunteers every single time, I was like, if you want to get me mad, start trying to piggyback your ministry on this work, and call attention to your ministry, because you can derail something that is so delicate right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had people do that. We have people be like, oh, I have a ministry where I talk about, generational stuff or bloodline stuff. And it's just like, no, like, these people are broke. You don't start talking about that stuff with them. They're broken.
Mm-hmm.
They need love right now. They need
Mm-hmm.
compassion. They don't need you trying to, find every cause behind everything that ever happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't do that part. What we do is we then get them. All of our safe houses are supported by a church network.
Mm,
So that's kind of like how, a lot of why we segue in. Each of our houses has multiple churches. So if there's a problem at the house or a need at the house, for some reason, the girls in our safe houses, they love to break the dryer or the washing machine. We don't know why. It's a phenomenon we can't figure out. But we've probably gone through 5 washing machines in the last 5 years. Um, but when we have that need, we know, okay, so this is safe house number 2. Let's reach out to this pastor, and this pastor, and just say, hey, this happened. Either any of you want the opportunity to jump in. And every time one of those churches jumps in. So the church network is integral to what we do. And then at that point, a lot of our survivors in our houses are going to start asking, why are these people giving this to you? Why is this happening this way? And then we're like, well, I mean, these are Christians, and they believe that they're supposed to love you and take care of you, and they partner with us and our team. And, and then once that kind of has naturally happened, and again, we are living the gospel before them every second that we're with them, as we love them and take care of them and protect them and shield them. Then we can give them the option. Would you ever want to go to visit one of these churches? And the phenomenal thing again about the church's role in all of this, so it's a two-edged sword. The church needs to be on the front lines. The church is also very complicit right now. So we're battling this on both sides, but we've established a network of people that we trust, and then we will say, hey, I'll reach out to you, usually the pastor. I have a good relationship with the pastor, and I'll say, hey, we're thinking about letting one of our survivors, come to a service. Usually it'll be my wife and I that will bring them, or one of our case managers or higher up team members. um, is there anything I need to know about the service? Just to let you know, she'll be here with me. They don't call attention to her or anything like that. And then when she's there, almost every time they will say something like, I've never felt anything like this. Everyone is so loving. Everyone is so nice. Can I come again? And, especially over the last couple of years, almost all of our clients have become integrated with the local church. And then that local church not only serves them, but takes a huge amount of the weight off us and our team when it comes to these individuals. So it's kind of how all that ties together. And then at that point, we'll get them a Bible, we'll get them journaling materials. If they want them, if they're encouraged about seeking the Lord, we have our own library that we'll make available to them. If they speak another language, we'll get Bibles in their language, materials in their language, and we'll just, again, lovingly encourage, but never pressure, and just let the Holy Spirit do the work at that point. Because honestly, once they're in a place where they're recognizing they are so loved and so protected, it's just a very natural thing for them to gravitate to the Lord. So
I'm so glad you said that, because I'm not sure exactly where it is. You might know, but faith without works is dead, right? So it's like you got you got to love on them, man. I mean, it's good
yeah,
to preach the word, but there's a time and a place for everything, I guess, is what we're both trying to say. Um, that's
yeah,
amazing. I am so thrilled that Joseph introduced us, and I am looking forward to what lies beyond. I don't know where this is going for me in particular. Uh, I don't know what's in store for you, but I know you're doing kingdom work, and I'm glad that we met. As we start to wrap up, um, do you have any information you want to pass out to the public? Like, you want to shout out your website or anything like that, that where people could? How can people help? How can people get plugged in? Is what I guess I'm trying to say.
yeah, absolutely. So you can go to thelantern.net. That's our website. We have tons of resources there. A lot of information about who we are and what we do. The key things I would say, sign up for our emails, because, again, I'm putting out content regularly about, dangerous apps, new social media trends, predator trends, all of this, just to keep everyone continually aware of what's going on in the fight. So that's a great way. We have tons of resources on there. We have, PDFs for parents to go over. We have video trainings. We're developing a brand new LMS full of training videos for parents, grandparents, school teachers. All of those are going to be available soon. We have a new AI on our website, so you can call the AI and actually ask questions on how to secure your devices, things like that. The AI has been trained to walk you through securing devices, keeping your kids safe. And then we have a bunch of tech alternatives which parents don't often consider, but things like Bark phones, as a smartphone alternative that comes secure out of the box. We talk about Griffin routers and software and hardware that you can access. But I encourage everyone, just jump on there, take a look at the resources in particular, especially if you have teens and preteens who have access to internet-ready technology. It's vital that we start talking about this at a younger and younger age, because I can promise you, if we're not talking about it, the predators are. The predators are already accessing them, and it's increasingly important that we have these tools in our toolbox. So,
I think that's really, really good. I did an interview last week with a guy named Nick McKinley. If you haven't had a chance to check that interview out, I would recommend it, because he was really squared away, just like yourself. And the analogy he used it just really resonated with me, because you can have a gun or 20 guns, and you can have a Belgian Malinois, and you can have all these things, but if you're not securing your child's device, none of it matters. And when he said that to me, I was like, wow, my children are grown now, but that really resonated with me. And that's what you're saying too, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Kids are access. So some of the most recent data from the Center for Missing and Exploited Children says it now takes a predator 8 minutes to form a lasting bond with your child online, and they can access them. So we've had cases through Roblox, cases through Minecraft, Fortnite, every social media platform. We had a case on Spotify where a groomer was using Spotify album covers and artwork to to communicate with kids. So the devices are literally portals to the Wild West at this point. It's completely just unregulated for the most part. So we definitely encourage parents, if you do one thing, delay technology as long as you possibly can. And then, go to like our website, thelantern.net. We have parent tools and parent tips, things like charging stations, tech bedtimes. Like in our house, we have a no tech out of sight rule. So phones don't go, tablets don't go to the bathroom, they don't go upstairs, they don't ever leave that main living area. So there's lots of tools and tips like that, but it could take 5-10 minutes to just peruse that and get some data that can literally cause you to intercept, predatory activity on your child's devices. So super, super important.
That sounds really, really smart. One of my cousins used to have that rule. He's a pastor. You'd love. I got to introduce you guys. You'd love him. But uh, when his kids were growing up, like it was more laptops. I mean, I guess you had phones and tablets and things too. But his rule was if you're going to be on the laptop, you have to be sitting at the kitchen table. And I just thought that was really smart.
Yeah, yeah. It's because it's so fast now. That's what I'm saying. I have the horrible, distinction of having to read over some of these transcripts, and it's happening so fast. So you can think, okay, my kid has only been on YouTube for 30 minutes, but it can take 3-4 clicks from a video they're watching, and they're accessing either something very graphic sexually, or something just like graphically scary. There's a lot of that on YouTube. So great rule to have. It's an easy thing to do, and it can make the world a difference. So
Well, Simon, I really appreciate your time tonight. I really hope people watch this, and I hope people go to your website. And I'm really sincerely looking forward to helping do whatever I can do to help you guys.
oh man, we're excited. We'll take someone like you in a heartbeat, man. We got plenty of jobs we can plug you straight into. So definitely going to stay in touch.
Okay, thank you so much, buddy. Have a good night.
Thanks. You too.